Factoring quadratic equations, part 2. Okay. So last night we worked on factoring quadratics where the a equaled 1 every single time. Now today we're going to work on when a does not equal 1, that it equals another number. Okay? In that sense, we're going to have to follow the same steps where you're going to factor out the GCF as possible. We're going to use the X factor. We're going to list the factors of A and C with a T-chart, okay? Rewrite as a polynomial with the fuller terms, and this is what you have to pay attention to. Today, after you find what our four terms are, our polynomials are with the four terms, now we're going to have to divide by A before we can solve for X, okay? So here we go. Let's look at this, and then we'll look at a few problems on the homework. All right, right here. 2x squared plus x minus 21 equals 0. All right, the first thing we have to do is we have to list out A, B, and C. A is 2, B is 1, C is negative 21. Next step, just like last night, we have to do the X factor. Okay, remember again, we multiply and then we add. Okay, we're going to have to multiply these two to get this and these two numbers to get that, to get that. Okay, so in our addic, we have AC. So 2 times negative 21 is negative 42, and B is 1. So let's set up our T-chart for negative 42. I'm not going to worry about the negative at this moment. I'm just going to pay attention to my factors, okay? So we have 1 and 42, 2 and 21, 3 and 14, 6 and 7. Okay, remember I have to add numbers together to get 1. This is my only option right there. Okay, now that's fine. If we add these together right now, we cannot get 1. All right, but if I make 6 a negative, negative 6 plus 7 is a positive 1, and negative 6 times 7 is a negative 42. So my factors are going to be negative 6 and 7. Okay, so as we did yesterday, the exact same thing. We are going to write x minus 6, x plus 7 equals 0. Now this does equal 0, so we're going to solve it all the way through. All right. Now, at this point, this is where we have to remember since A is not a 1, we have to divide by A term. Okay, so we're going to divide by 2, divide by 2. We're just dividing those numbers. So now I have x minus 3 equals x plus 7 over 2 equals 0. Now I can set each one equal to 0. X minus 3 equals 0, and x plus 7 halves equals 0. Add 3, x equals 3. Subtract 7 halves, x equals negative 7 halves. So x equals negative 7 halves and 3. And that is the answer for that one. So the only difference in tonight's homework versus last night's homework is you're going to have to factor, or not factor, you're going to have to divide by that A term. Now, I did not pull out a GCF. And the reason I didn't pull out a GCF is I have a 2, a 1, and a 21. Well, when you have a 1 here, you know for sure you don't have a greatest common factor other than 1. Let's look at the next problem, though, because the next problem does have the GCF. So that step 1 where it says factor out GCF if possible, that's one of the things you need to be able to look at and recognize. Okay. Now, see how we have a negative 4x squared, a minus 18x, and a minus 8. I know for sure there's a 2 in common and there's a negative in common. Do you see how all these are a negative? I want to pull those out because I'd much rather deal with positives, okay? So if all my signs are negatives, my GCF is going to be a negative number, all right? Or a negative term. So the first thing let's do is let's find our GCFs. Okay, so the first thing here is we have 4x squared. That factors out into 2 and 2. So we have 2 times x times x. And 18x factors out to 2 and 9, 3 and 3. 2 times 3 times 3 times x. I'll go ahead and put boxes around these so we know exactly what we're looking at. Then we have a negative 8. Whoopsie, 8. We have a 2 and a 4 and a 2 and a 2. 2 times 2 times 2. Okay. So now what do I have in common here? Well, I have a 2, and a 2. And I cannot pull anything else out because this one doesn't have another 2 in it. Neither one of these have 3's. And that term doesn't have an x. So our greatest common factor is a negative 2. Now remember, why is it negative? Because I'm pulling a negative out of all of those. Okay? So if I pull out the negative, I'm going to go ahead and do the math to show you. If you have negative 4x squared minus 18x minus 8 equals 0, and I divide by the greatest common factor, that's going to leave me with negative 2 equals 2x squared plus 9x plus 4 equals 0. Now, how can I check that I'm right or if I'm correct? Look, 2x squared, 2x squared. 3 times 3 is 9x, 9x, 4 and 4, and everything's a positive just like this because we already pulled that negative. All right, so now let's work with our trinomial. So now we can say A equals, B equals, C equals. A equals 2, B equals 9, C equals 4. Time for x factor. 2 times 4, our attic is 8, and 9 is in the bottom. So let's make our t-chart. 1 multiplies to give us 8. 1 and 8, 2 and 4. Okay, so which of these sets of factors can we add together to get 9? This is our only option, 1 and 8. So now we're going to write out negative 2, x plus 1 x plus 8 equals 0. Okay, now remember I have a 2, an A that's a 2, so I have to divide. I have to divide this by 2 and this by 2. So now I have negative 2 x plus 1/2 x plus 4 equals 0. Okay, are you with me? I did the same thing I did on the last problem. I divided by my A term. If you pretend like that one's not there, okay, pretend like your GCF is not there, you still have to divide by that A because it's other than a 1, all right? Now, I'm fixing to do the next step and I need you to pay attention to me. We do not want fractions when we're dealing with a GCF out on the outside, okay? Now, you can do this anytime, actually. You can do the fraction part. I'm just going to show it to you on this problem. Here's the trick. To get rid of the fraction, you take whatever number's in the denominator and you move it to your coefficient. So now you have negative 2. I'm going to write it in pink so you can see it. 2x plus 1, x plus 4 equals 0. Take your denominator and make it your coefficient. All right? Now I need to get rid of my GCF. I can't have my GCF just hanging out there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide by negative 2. What you do to one side, you do to the other. That cancels that out, and this still gives me 0. Okay? This might be one of those videos you have to watch a couple of times to understand the problem, and I'm completely okay with that. And that's why it's here. So now we have 2x plus 1, x plus 4 equals 0. Now, since it's set equal to 0, we have to set each of our terms equal to 0. Oops, I don't need parentheses, do I? We'll just wipe that out. Okay, so we have 2x plus 1 equals 0. X plus 4 equals 0. So we're going to subtract 1. 2x equals negative 1. Divide by 2. X equals negative 1/2. And if you subtract 4, x equals negative 4. So x equals negative 1/2 and negative 4. Scoot that up so you can see it. Okay, the only difference is when you have a GCF, you have to pull out that greatest common factor. You still have to divide if your trinomial is something greater than 1. You still have to divide by it, and then your trick is taking your denominator, putting it in your numerator, divide by your GCF, and let it equal 0. Okay? Now, let's try another one together before I release you on your homework. If you flip your homework assignment over from yesterday, it now says 8-7, solving practice, or skills practice, and it says solving ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Okay, now, let's work on this one together. Let's do number 2. 3n squared plus 5n plus 2. Now, this does not equal 0, so we're just going to come up with our polynomials, okay? There is not a greatest common factor because that's a 2, this is a 5, and a 3, and those are all prime numbers, okay? So what we're going to do is the instructions say if the polynomial cannot be factored using integers, write prime. So if we cannot factor this, we're just going to say that the answer is prime. All right? So the first step is let's list out. A is 3, B is 5, C is 2. 3 times 2 is 6, and 5. 1 and 6, 2 and 3. Okay? Add up to get 5, 1 and 6, but if I make I have to say negative 1 plus 6 would give me 5. And let's look at this. Let's look at this so you can see it here on the calculator. Okay. I know those are the only, I have another factor here. So I could look at this and try to get 5. Well, let's see. 1 plus 6 is 7. That doesn't work. Negative 1 plus 6 is 5. Okay, but negative 1 times 6 doesn't give me a positive 6, so I can't do that. Okay, so let's look at the next set. Well, 2 times 3 is 6. 2 plus 3 is 5, so let's just use the 2 and the 3. Those are our factors. Okay, so here we go. X plus 2, x plus 3. Now remember, our a is something other than 3. So we are going to divide by 3, divide by 3. Here I have x plus 2/3 and x plus 1. Now you can use your little trick here. You can take the 3 and you can move it up front. So you can have 2x plus 2 and x plus 1. Now, on these, I changed everything to an x, didn't I? Sorry, they should be n's. But we can go back and we can check this, okay? And I'm going to check this. Here we go. We're going to FOIL. So let's move over here and let's FOIL. And I'll move those back to n's. Sorry about that. I should have left those as n's in the first place. I'm just used to x's. First is 2n squared. Outside, 2n. Inside, 2n. Last, 2. Okay. So we have 2n squared plus 4n plus 2. Is this the same answer as that? No. So this one is going to be prime. So you would write prime.